Oh, goody, more inflation. Before we get to Carol, just keep in mind, their goal is always 2% inflation. That's the goal they're going to. So today we have inflation numbers 5% year over year. Remember, that's not just 5%, that's on top of all the previous inflation. That makes it 16%. And remember, that's the fudged number, so you feel better about things. Why do they want you to feel better about things? Because they know you're well aware of the fact that eggs are up 36, airfare 17, bread 15, electric. You know what? You know it all. It's really, really bad. It's really bad. Everything in your life is more expensive. The value of your dollar is going down. Well, don't worry. Janet Yellen says we're just churning and burning, though.
The United States is doing extremely well economically, with inflation coming down and a strong labor market.
That's weird. I didn't notice that. Joining me now, the great Carol Roth, who has a new book coming out called You Will Own Nothing. Remember, that is the plan of the elites who run this planet. Carol, latest inflation report is, I guess it's not 8%, it's 5%, so yippee.
Yes, well, they told you that inflation was going to be transitory. The part that they left out, that it was going to take multiple years for that transitoriness to kick in. I mean, listen, like we have to give, some hat tip, I guess, it's coming down. But as I've said all along, they're going to celebrate this, not realizing it's on top of the 9 whatever percent that we had last year, and everything else that we have to deal with. So it's not a great number. It's a positive trajectory. I'm glad that we're moving in that direction. The challenge is that it really may not be enough for the Fed to stop their interest rates from continuing to push them up. And that takes a while to cycle through the economy, particularly after we've had 15 years of suppressed interest rates, 9+ years of zero interest rate policy. And I think that is just going to be far too much for the economy to handle. And as I've been saying, that the recession, not that it's not going to show up to the party, it's just going to be fashionably late.
Oh, gosh. Okay, so I'm glad you brought up interest rates. What is the Fed saying? Are we looking at another little mini bump? Are they going to look at a number like this and say, well, it's got to be 7.5 the next time? What are we looking at? What do you think?
So right now, the market is pricing in a 25 basis point, that's 0.25% hike. And then the bets are that they will probably pause after that, assuming that the data doesn't pick up again. Obviously, we have things to watch. We know that OPEC Plus is going to be cutting their oil production. So that's something that could end up pushing up inflation, unless, of course, recessionary pressures end up bringing that back down and it sort of evens out in the wash. But I think that that's what they're going to be looking at, is probably doing a little bit more and then pausing and seeing how that goes. But again, I think that what they're trying to do and the effect of their policy has this lag. Normally policy would take 6, 12, maybe 18 months to cycle through. The fact that we had all of the suppressed interest rates meant that all of the companies and consumers who wanted debt had ample time to lock that down. So it's going to take a little while for that to run out and for them to then need to double down on that. So eventually consumers are not going to have more debt capacity. Eventually businesses are going to feel the pressure, not be able to take on more debt or see that increasing cost of capital. We're not getting a huge bump in productivity out of labor. So unfortunately, again, I think that all means that, regardless of what the Fed does, that we're marching in the wrong direction. And speaking of marching in the wrong direction, the government is marching in the wrong direction, opposing everything that the Fed is doing and racking up a deficit of $1.1 trillion for the first half of the 2023 fiscal year, which is $400 some odd billion higher than it was last year at the same time. So they are not giving anybody any relief, and they are just marching us off of a fiscal cliff.
Carol, why do they do this? I have people ask me this all the time. They know the inflation numbers. They know the interest rate numbers. They can read. They know the dangerous situation we're in, and yet they don't stop. They don't slow down. It's just have another trillion here and another trillion there. Carol, it's almost like they want us to collapse.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two levels of it. There is sort of the sort of human nature of, let's do what's right in principle, stop this in the long run, but I might have to sacrifice some of my personal gain today for that. And of course, they don't want to sacrifice their personal gain, even if it affects them in the long run, because unfortunately, human beings don't think like that. But the other piece here is that we really are moving towards this new financial world order. And this is not a conspiracy theory. Jesse, you're a student of history. You know that this happens in regular cycles, not just Rome, but in very recent times. We had the British imperial century, and the Dutch was the center of the global financial universe right before them. So this happens on an ongoing basis. Joe Biden said this in a comment in front of the Business Roundtable in 2021, that we are, headed towards a new global economy, a new world order. And then, of course, he says, we've got to lead it. Whoever knows what we is, but people who are smart and savvy know that the world order is shifting. And so I think they're doing the things to position themselves to be able to control every resource they can and put themselves on top, whether or not it collapses everybody, at the same time. So they don't care if you own nothing. They just want to make sure that they control everything as we have this global changeover. And I think that's just what you're seeing, and why for many people it doesn't make sense and it's hard to connect those dots.
Carol, the dollar, I don't think people really fully grasp what a big deal is if the dollar stops being the world's reserve currency. And not that I'm saying that's going to happen tomorrow, although a bunch of people would like it to happen tomorrow. We are heading in that direction. What does that mean for us if the dollar stops being the world's reserve currency?
So there's always been a pro and a con to being the world reserve currency. On the con side is something called the Triffin dilemma, which means that the Fed and the U.S. government have to manage the stability of the dollar, not just for the domestic economy, but for the stability of the world, which is often at odds. Amazingly, Jesse, they've managed to do neither. So, that's kind of one issue. And, we typically run trade deficits because we have to supply the world with dollars. But on the pro side, it means that we've been able to have very low cost of capital. It has suppressed interest rates. And again, nobody's taken more advantage of this than the U.S. government, who has been able to finance their unwieldy and, growing spending and government expansion with very low cost of debt. What happens when we don't keep it stable is that it threatens the food and economic security, the national security of countries who are buying things in dollars, because all of a sudden your food and your oil that's priced in dollars, and you've got dollars that don't buy as much. Well, now you've got national security and economic crises. What it means for us, if this all goes away, and this is the backdrop of why this is going away, is a completely different standard of living. I think that it's going to threaten our military security. I think it's going to threaten the ability to live the lifestyle that people have and the wealth creation opportunities. And so, that is the privilege and that we've been living through for 80 years now as the center of the global financial universe. And people feel like we're invincible because they've never seen anything different. But I would imagine when the British, were at the center of the universe, that their people felt invincible, and the same thing with the Dutch. And, this is not a given. This is something that, requires a duty to protect this privilege that we've been given. Is called the exorbitant privilege. And unfortunately, the people who are in charge did not protect that privilege and have done everything they can to decimate it. And once again, who's going to end up paying the ultimate price? It is going to be Americans and the American dream.
Carol, thank you for making us smarter. I appreciate you.